Now another thing that I really enjoy about our conversations is that you dive into a lot of material, material, books, podcasts, things of that nature. I admittedly, I usually spend my time reading things that are an escape, are a departure. I'm a big fan of spy thrillers and novels, big James Bond buff. Hopefully the new movie comes out at some point. I've been diving into some of the old books, but I think what people dive into, the materials that they dive into, says a lot about kind of their persona, because there's a personal aspect of it. But it's also an investment in yourself and in your sales persona, your leadership persona. I'm curious, Matt, your thoughts around some of those types of materials. What attracts you to something that you read or something that you dive into from a podcast perspective? The people that you follow a lot of the luminaries of selling as well. We've got some good mutual contacts. And so I'd love to hear from a sales leadership perspective, what have you gravitated toward? Where has it helped you? And what recommendations would you make to people that might be listening today?
So right now I'm reading Birth of a Salesman by you. Started it last night. It's great. It resonates. And I read Salesman on Fire. I read Mike Weinberg's book, Mark Hunter's book. I gotta say something that might be a little unpopular, Carson. I feel like I got to a point in reading all of these books where I kind of became a self-help zombie. You know what that means?
I love it. Yeah.
Where I was reading these books and I was trying to do and listen to these podcasts and reading these articles, but I got to a point where I'm like, I'm pretty good. How many times do I need to read something about a better way to do it?
Yeah.
So I again, in 2021, you talked about what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to scale back on some of that stuff and be more selective about some of that stuff. I'm going to try to escape into some of those books that aren't about sales and selling and leadership. I think I'll still pick up one a month and kind of dig into that. But I got to be honest, at nighttime, I've been escaping from the stress and the pandemic and the selling. And we were watching The Sopranos. It's funny because I've been posting a little bit about it on my socials, and I've had customers and prospects interacting with me about The Sopranos more than I have about anything else I posted about sales and leadership and French fries.
And what does that tell you? They are people too. They want to have those same conversations. And that's the stuff that they remember. Is I was able to connect with Matt because we had a shared interest. And we have so much of this stuff at our fingertips now. I mean, it's often very easy to find your customers on LinkedIn or Twitter or other social platforms and to be able to see like, hey, they have an interest in this. That's the perfect conversation starter. Right. It doesn't always have to sound like what everybody else is bombarding them with. And I mean, frankly, that's why it's noise and that's why they turn it off. They want to see genuine social interaction. I love what you just said about that. And look, I'm the same way. Like, I like to read Bond novels because they're always in exotic locales. And, I miss traveling as much as I was before. And so it's an escape for me. But at the same time, there's stuff like Jeffrey Gitomer, Jeb Blount, Dale Carnegie, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Those are staples of things that I've read, material that I've read over the years that will always stick out to me. And I think there's a common thread in everything that you just said, because you can overdo it with some of these mediums. I think you've got to mix it up with some things that really speak to your other interests and hobbies, because you got to keep your mind exercised. Like, you can't just focus on one element. And a lot of these sales and leadership books, I mean, they have a very common theme. That's precisely why I knew I couldn't reinvent the wheel if I wrote something. I had no desire to write a typical sales book. That's why I created a novel and a fictional character. But I think the critical aspect is, what I love most about our conversations is that you're a student. You're a student of the game. You want to know as much as you can, but you understand the parameters of that game. And so what I'd love to get from you is where you think that gives you a leg up, because I know from my vantage point, I was having a conversation this week about that. There's an element of sales that is good salesmanship, good relationship building. I mean, that's the biggest part, frankly, is the good relationship building, and understanding, product knowledge, understanding your organization. But there's a whole other element that is knowing how you get paid, knowing what your company cares about, knowing those parameters that matter. It's kind of like knowing when to hit a bloop single over the first baseman's head, because you need that base hit. So there's an element of it that is understanding the parameters, how contracts work, how to make good give-get types of deals
Correct.
with people. So I'd love to get your perspective on where that plays in your role, and your thoughts just in general about being a student of the game and how impactful that's been for you.
I think in being successful, I think you have to do things that other people aren't willing to do. That's first and foremost. I can't speak for my competitors, and I can't speak for people within my organization, but I like to think that I'm reading more books and listening to more podcasts and reading more articles than anybody else. I think that I might be wrong, but if I feel that someone's encroaching on my territory, or I'm kind of getting beat a little bit, I pick it up. Again, I think it goes back to that personal development. No one's going to develop your skills for you until you do it yourself. What we do, our jobs, what do you want to say, 9 to 5, 8 to 7, whatever. But it's the unseen hours, I call them.
Yes.
The unseen hours. What are you doing before you start? What are you doing after you start? That's what's setting me apart from the competition. And it's the monotonous things that aren't fun, that you can get complacent on doing, that you have to be enthusiastic about doing.
One of the things, many things that I love about our conversations is that, like almost every other sentence, you drop these like just knowledge bombs. The unseen hours. There's your next blog title, by the way. I love analogies, and I love sports analogies, as you know, if you're reading Birth of a Salesman. And
oh yeah,
I always refer to the hustle stats. Like the stuff you're playing a basketball game, and did you chase after the loose ball? Did you really play some tough defense? Things that don't show up in the box score. And as a seller and as a leader, those types of things are some of the most important. Some of that is the stuff we've talked about today, the investment in relationships and things that you did. Maybe you made a phone call to somebody just checking in or wishing them a happy holiday season, Merry Christmas, thinking about you. Those are investments that they're not going to pay an immediate dividend, but those folks, it's going to resonate and they're going to remember you. And the other parts are, what are you willing to do that other folks aren't doing? I often ask people, in sales and leadership roles, are you 100% satisfied with your results right now? And it's rare that people will say, oh yeah, I'm 100% satisfied. Because if you're not, what are you so afraid of risking your results that you're not satisfied with to change, to get better results? You're not going to have reward without some risk, and there's strategic risk that you can take. And what I recommend to a lot of folks is just, take a step back and look at what's the most important stuff. The most of the sellers that I talk to, they're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions, and they're ebbing and flowing with all of it. I mean, they're trying to keep up with everything, and you can't. I mean, there's days where my inbox gets out of control, and I have to let it, because it's more important that I get the 5 things that I listed at the beginning of the day done. It might be contact with this senior leader at an organization. It might be brokering an introduction with somebody. And if I don't move the ball down the field on those big ticket items, who cares if I have 100 emails in my inbox? It doesn't matter. I can sit there and answer a lot of those and sit and look at those. But, I loved what you said about those unseen hours as well, because there's so much that you can do during the day, but what are you doing outside of that to invest in yourself, to recharge and refresh,